So welcome to this webinar. So what the landscape will look like post-coronavirus. And this is Jonathan Fine. So do you want to get started, Johnny? I think.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. The landscape post-corona is what we're going to be talking about, what the new normal is going to be. There is no certainty about anything. I think we all know that. I think what is certain is that you are going to have to change. You're going to have to change how you run your practice, how you work, and how you run your team. In order to give this sort of some kind of structure and not make it a kind of rambling conversation about the awfulness of the crisis, I've sort of picked four themes that I think are probably the most relevant way of looking at it. The first one is the economy. I think we all know that we're going to go back to a recession, but how big is that recession? How long is it going to last? And who's going to suffer and who's going to actually win from it? Because there's always winners and losers in a recession. The next thing I'm going to talk about are social norms. I think the thing about this whole sort of situation is that everything's kind of changed, not just from an economic point of view, but also from a social point of view. Most of us are working from home if we're working. A lot of us just aren't working. It has affected how we behave, I suspect. People are spending time with their children that they never spent time with their children before. And all of that has an impact. So I'd like to talk about that a wee bit. The next area I'm going to focus on is the cost of delivery of dental treatments. And I think they're going to change quite a bit. I think we're all aware that the protocols that need to support cross-contamination or reduction in cross-contamination, or the possibility of it, have a cost. And we need to explore that a wee bit. And then the final area is to look at the overall market forces. So what I mean by that is that the market's actually going to change. Your market might not change a lot, but your market might change quite a bit because of the market forces. And what I mean by that is that a number of dental practices are going to go out of business. Other dental practices might reduce their prices aggressively in order to win business. Those are kind of things that I mean by market forces. So we'll explore that a wee bit. But all of this really is a massive variable. It's a way of just trying to simplify how we can talk about this big change that's coming. And every situation is different. So your context is different. So what I mean by that is that the geography of where you are is going to behave differently under these four conditions. So it'll be different in Carlisle than it will be in Clapham. And there will be differences. There will be differences if you're just purely an NHS practice, or if you're a mixed practice, or if you're totally private. That will have an impact as to how these elements impact you. The treatment modalities that you provide at your practice are also going to have an impact. So if your practice doesn't do implants and doesn't do ortho and sends out root canal treatments, then the impact of all of this is probably not going to be anywhere near as changing as it would be if you were heavily dependent on an orthodontics and implants and high value treatments generally. That would make quite a big difference. So all of those things are relative to your particular location and situation. And the last bit that's really important is about you. Is what kind of person are you? Are you somebody that really is intimidated by all of this and really doesn't want to get too involved? Or somebody that actually relishes the challenge and wants to get on and wants to capitalize on the opportunities which undoubtedly will exist as a result of this? What kind of person are you, and how are you going to respond to that? So you've kind of got four components, and then you've got the context bits that you have to adjust into your own self to get anything out of this webinar at all. So if I start with the economy again and talk about the economy, there's obviously loads and loads of people are talking about the economy. There's lots and lots of, every day there's some extra news that's going to tell you something amazing. But something that everybody seems to be forgetting is that actually prior to COVID-19 becoming the sort of evil thing that it is in our lives, we were actually heading for a bit of a recession. We were actually coming out of Brexit, if you remember, and all of the soothsayers, all of the markets were suggesting that the UK was going to go into a recession. It also suggested that the Irish economy would suffer badly from the UK coming out of Europe. So all of that was sort of going on in the background, as was the sort of the collapse of the Chinese economy, or the reduction in growth in the Chinese economy. And you probably were aware that only in February, Italy moved into recession, and closely followed by, anticipated to be followed by Spain and possibly France. And the German economy was also in a bit of a blip as well. So the overall landscape prior to COVID-19, the economic landscape was pretty bad. You know, it wasn't actually what you'd say it was going to be a boom economy. We also had an American election coming up, or we still have an American election coming up. And I think we've all seen the kind of chaos that Donald Trump can cause with just a tweet or an ill-placed comment. So we were starting to see a fairly unsettled time, and along comes COVID. And I think we all want to believe that the COVID thing we're going to deal with it, and it's going to be okay. But it isn't really. I think it's going to be quite a changing economy forever. I don't think it's going to go back anything like to the way it was. Some wise people were talking about a V-shaped recession, so we'd come down quickly, which we clearly have because people aren't at work, and then we go back to work, and it would come back really quickly. And then other people were talking about a U-shaped recession, where we'd go down and we'd stay down for a bit, and then we'd come out maybe next year, towards the end of next year. I want you to think about an L-shaped recession, which is we go down and we stay down, and we're going to be down for a long time, in my opinion, probably 3 years, and it will take maybe 4 years, maybe longer. I don't know, but the economy is not going to be anything like the way it was, and there's going to be lots of different pressures politically in terms of how we support the unemployed, because there's going to be 8 million people unemployed. There's going to be pressure around how we look after the NHS. I mean, these guys that are literally giving their lives to protect us at the minute, who's going to refuse a nurse a salary increase? All of this has to be paid for. And the sort of knock-on effect of that, of course, is that our taxation system means that things are going to have to, you've got to pay for it. So tax has to come, it has to go up. So the kind of wealth that we were enjoying is going to get sort of spread out a wee bit. There's going to be a big lump of unemployment. But of course, there will be sort of winners and losers. And I don't think we should always think that a recession is bad news. There are lots of people that make money in recessions because they actually play to what the audience might want to buy. So how would I conclude that section on the economy? I would say that you need to brace yourself for a serious change in the way the economy works and how you play in part of that. And it's going to affect you on a business level and on a personal level, and it's going to affect you for quite a long time, in my opinion. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but I think you're probably talking 3 years from when we go back to work. And when we go back to work is obviously a kind of fairly topical question at the minute. So my best bet is that we'll start to drift back in July. But I think social distancing is going to be here into next year. And of course, that's going to have an impact on the economy, on how we behave. Related to this, to the economy, is the change in social norms. So I believe that the change in social norms are going to be significant. I think there will be a lot of people who are staying at home with their children, homeschooling their children at the moment, who will actually adjust to a different lifestyle and will start to think, actually, I really am enjoying my life better. I'm giving my children a better chance in life. I'm not going to need to earn as much as I used to earn because I'm going to actually bring my cost base down. I think one of the weird things about staying at home is that you stop spending money. I mean, I just can't believe how little money we spend, Janet and myself. The only thing, is it's tiny amount of food, money we spend on food. And normally we would probably eat out and spend, quite a lot of money on stuff like that. We stopped doing all that. So you can adjust your lifestyle. And I think a lot of people will be thinking, I don't really want to do this. From a personal point of view, I've realized that I can actually run my business on Zoom. So, and I absolutely hate traveling. So I'm going to have to say to my clients, look, I'm sorry, guys, I'm actually just do Zoom now. And I might even charge them less because I don't need to go and see them. So I don't have a big cost. So you can start to see how social changes can affect the way we actually want to work in the future. And I also think that there's I would say an obsession with health, but there's more of a concern about health and more of a concern about our well-being as people, but also how our social services perform, how we look after old people, how we look after healthcare people. All of that, I think, is going to change the way we actually see ourselves in society. And all of that will have a knock-on effect for many years to come. It's going to start to change the structures in society. And the reason that's important is because inevitably will affect how people see dentistry. I know that sounds a bit bizarre, but the growth of dentistry, and it has been growing amazingly since 2006 probably, but in particular since 2010, particularly in Ireland, where you've seen a massive growth of cosmetic dentistry. The average growth of dentistry, which is all private, is about 7 or 8% per annum, and it has been like that. That's compound every year; it goes up by 7 or 8%. Has been absolutely exclusively in the private sector, because we've become obsessed with ourselves and the selfie society, and we want to look better, and we've got disposable income, so we do all that. I'd say some of that's going to change, and I think you need to be aware of that. And it's going to change because our social norms are changing, and will change significantly, I think, over the next 5 years. The third area is the cost of delivery. And I'm talking about the delivery of dental treatments. And that is going to change. And it's going to change, I think we all know it's going to change, because we have to build in new protocols to protect our patients and ourselves and our team, whether they're clinical or non-clinical. All of us have a duty to protect our team against cross-infection. Yes, I know there's going to be a vaccine coming along at some stage, but I think most people are going to be concerned about cross-contamination in the dental environment. So we've all seen the start of these new protocols that are coming out, which involve the use of PPE, of pre-testing, of throat washers and all this sort of stuff in order to reduce the likelihood of infecting a patient. And all of that has a cost. Also related to that is the cost of decontaminating a surgery after you've had a patient in. And whilst I know I made a video yesterday about a machine you plug in and it clears the air perpetually, but you've still got to prepare the surgery for the next patient, and that has a cost. And I was talking to one of the corporates a couple of days ago, and we were talking about the cost of service delivery, of treatment delivery, and how that's going to increase. And if you think that probably the cost of the PPE equipment and a test is probably about £20 per patient, per person. So in other words, if you've got a dentist and a nurse, that's £40. And if you think that you also need some time to clean down the surgery, and if you think about how much time you're going to lose in your surgery per day when you do this, and you actually turn that into money, it's a bit scary. So if you've got an associate working for you and you do a filling for £100, and your associate earns 45%, so he gets £45, and say there's £5 in materials, so the practice gets £50 to pay for all the other services inside the practice. Well, if you've got to add in £20 or £40 on top of that, you can see what's going to happen to your bottom line. It's just going to disappear. So cost of delivery is significant and not to be underestimated. And as you're planning to go back to work, I think you need to start building up the protocol that you're going to use, and then costing it, and then looking at the impact of that on your cost base. For NHS practices, I suspect there will be some help from the government on that. I would hope so anyway. Otherwise, it's going to cost you to look after patients. And the fourth area that I want to talk about were the impact of all of this is around the market forces. And what I mean by that is that, I can't say it's a fact, but it's a likely to be a fact that the value of dental practices has probably halved. So if your practice was worth £1 million in February, it's worth £500,000 in April. And there are all sorts of ramifications with that because your borrowings are geared towards the value of your practice, etc. But it also means that for the corporates who are most are sitting on great bundles of cash, they can hoover up all the best practices for a lot less than they could have bought them for 2 months ago. And so you're going to see a market force of corporates, particularly the more successful entrepreneurial ones, not necessarily the big lumpy ones. They will be moving in, so you'll see probably the smaller groups trying to do a bit of a land grab and pick out the best practices. And if they pick out a practice in your area or they pick you out, it'll have an impact. Already, anecdotally, having spoken to one of the acquisition guys at the corporates, they're actually getting practice owners showing up at their doorstep and handing over the keys to their practice and sort of saying, look, can you take us over? So there will be some fairly big changes as a result of that. If you believe the BDA recent release, it was in the Sunday Times last week, they were talking about 20 to 30% of practices just not reopening because they can't afford to, because they can't get the cost structures right. So that's kind of good news if you're in one of the areas where 20% of the practice is closed down and it's not you. It means that you've got some opportunity to grab some extra business. But that's really going to distort things quite a bit. I think that there will be some sort of consolidation as well inside territories. I think we'll see maybe practices coming together and wanting to work together in order to sort of deliver a great service for their patients, but also give them continuity, give them a reason to be. So those are the four reasons, or the four sort of levers of change as I see it. As I said earlier, I think you really need to relate it back to your context, to the context of your business. So not all of them will be relevant. All of them might be relevant, and I'm sure there could be some other sort of drivers as well. So what are the upsides? So assuming that you feel as though, okay, I'm ready for this. I'm going to grow. I'm going to rebuild my business, reopen it, and I'm very quickly going to get it back to the point where it was as profitable as it was before. What are you going to have to do? Well, I think first of all, think about the upsides of dentistry. Dentistry, I don't think, is going to slow down. I think the demand will slow down for a while, but I'm sure it will come back gradually. I think there will be a slowdown in facial aesthetics. I think that might just sort of tank a wee bit for a while before it comes back, but I think it'll still be there. I think there's still going to be there. I think the good news about the sector is that it's seen by bankers and investors as being a very safe area to invest their money or to loan money. So I don't think there's going to be any sort of liquidity problems for you in terms of having to raise cash to either expand your business or buy a business, a practice that might want to be bought within your catchment. I think you'll find that fairly straightforward. Like I said, I think there's probably going to be much less players in the market. So again, that's an opportunity. But probably the biggest opportunity is in the whole area of retailization of dentistry. I think there's a real opportunity for the brave players to take advantage, massive advantage of the collapse in the rental market. So the practice that you want in the high shopping mall is now very much available. You can do that at much, much lower cost. You can relocate your practice at a much lower cost. If you're a new entrant into the market and you want to set up a squat, you're going to find it very, very sort of cost effective to do that. You're not going to find that a difficult thing to do at all. So I would say there are lots of upsides, but you need a plan. And the plan really needs to take into consideration those four elements, particularly your operational cost. And when you're looking at your operational cost, I think you're going to have to make some tough decisions, particularly on how you pay your associates. I think associate pay plans are going to have to change significantly. They're going to have to start with a 3, not a 4, in order to be viable. I do think I know that's going to be difficult for you, but I do think it's quite important that you grasp the nettle on that, and you grasp the nettle on your costs. So that's about it. Would sort of the last thing I'd probably say to you is, don't be a victim. Don't be one of the victims of this recession. Take charge. Take charge of your business. Take charge of your team. Take charge of your life. Review your cost base as though you were a forensic accountant. Challenge every single cost in your cost base. Build a marketing system that has clear objectives. In other words, don't sit there and expect all the patients to come to you, because they will come to you because there's a lot of pent-up demand in the system. But the high-value patients need to know you're there. And you need to build a marketing system, an efficient marketing system that's going to deliver those high-value patients. And probably the last point is that you really do need to make sure that you've got very accurate performance reporting systems. It does actually amaze me at how many big practices I work with when I go to meet them for the first time that actually don't have any idea how they're actually performing on an individual basis. They've no idea how their clinicians are performing, how their marketing's performing. They do know broadly how much money they're making and everything's good because it's always been good, and they haven't really had to worry about it, and they can wait for the year-end accounts that will confirm that they've been earning what they thought they were earning. The world isn't going to be like that. This is the time to take charge of your business and run it as a business. No other business would run without accurate information about performance every 4 weeks. I haven't really anything else to add to you except to say that Fine Company is happy to help you. That's why we're doing this, obviously, but we're happy to invest as well. So if you want to have a consultation with me or one of my colleagues, we're very happy to do that on no cost basis. All you've got to do is drop me an email or contact Lucy and she'll sort that out. So if there's any questions, really happy to take them now. That's the end of the webinar. Thanks very much for attending, and hopefully I'll meet you all at some stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. There's not actually been any questions submitted, so yeah, I think we're good to kind of carry on. So thank you very much for everyone for joining. As Johnny said, you can contact me or Jonathan to book in a consultation. I'll send out this webinar to everyone tomorrow because it's been recorded today. So if you have any questions, if you watch it back, then please do get in touch. Thank you very much.
Everybody, bye. Bye.